Hey there, it's Rebecca of Bryan House Quilts, and I wanted to pop in today because I'm feeling a little bit in a sewing funk, and it's really no surprise because I've had so much go on this summer. I moved from Houston to St. Louis, and my kids are at home, so I'm busy being a mom. And I was thinking about how, well, my mom and I were also talking about this, and my mom and I were talking, and she was saying that she really felt like she lost her sewjo. And I completely commiserated with her because of the aforementioned. I feel like I've lost my sewjo too. And it just got me thinking about what I do when I feel like I've lost the motivation to sew. And I usually do three things. So it's usually, I try one of these three tricks, and that usually does the trick. Okay, so I'm pausing for a second to see if I have any comments on here. I want to make sure that I'm live and streaming. Yes, and I am live and streaming. So if you're joining me, if you could just leave me a comment and let me know that you're joining, especially let me know if you can hear me. I don't know if you saw my Facebook Live yesterday, but I was trying out this new thing. I'm actually trying out this new app called the Switcher Studio app, which allows me to switch from this camera to an overhead camera, and I'll switch to that camera in a second. You'll see it. It's a pretty cool app, but I wanted to try it and make sure it worked before I went on with a real Facebook Live. So if you're joining me, I would love it if you would leave me a comment just saying hi, tell me where you're tuning in from. If you're watching later, go ahead and say hi again. I will see it later. Okay, so what I am going to talk through are these three tricks that I try when I feel like I've lost my sewing motivation. And really, it's hard for me to lose my sewing motivation because it's my job and I have to find it. But so it's not that I don't lose my motivation. It's just I can't afford to lose my sewing motivation. So I really think through, why do I not want to sew? Okay, so number one, the first thing I try if I've lost my sewjo, the first thing I try is taking the next step in whatever project I'm working on. And you guys are probably like me. You probably have quilts that are so close to being done, they just need the binding put on. And I will often lose my motivation at that step. So what I do, I'll switch the camera now. So what I do for that specific case is I just make the binding strip. So this is a binding strip, right? And so what I do is I make the binding strip, and even just taking the smallest step. So if I make the binding strip, that makes me feel good and maybe helps me feel good about making progress for my project. So hey Anna, yeah, I know this is a common thing where we get the quilt already made and all we have to do is finish the binding and then it's done. And so if you do that, and I know Anna does it, I know it's a really common thing. So if you do that, you are not alone, my friend. And if you're watching this later, you can just type in the comments, just type in me. But what I found really helpful is just taking the next step. So there are so many little steps for making the binding. So one, you have to cut the strips. You actually might have to decide on the fabric. So maybe even just deciding on the fabric would be a great first step. I know for me, just cutting the strips sometimes will help me break loose from my sewing funk. And once I have those strips cut, then I'll sew them and then iron them and then make the binding strip. And so if I take the next step for my project, then sometimes it helps me shake loose from my lack of motivation, and it might help you. Okay, so the second trick I try is starting something new. So what I've done for myself is I bought a new book, and this one just happens to be a book of pin cushions. It's called Pin Pals by Carrie Nelson. And just starting something new feels so completely irresponsible sometimes, but it's just the thing to make me feel like sewing is fun again. So the second reason why sometimes I lose my sewing motivation is because sewing feels like a chore, And so if I pick a new fun project, then I can kind of trick my mind into thinking sewing is fun again, and then I have a new project to work on. So I've made these 2 little pin cushions, and all I have to do to finish these is fill them with that those nutshells and then close them up. So starting a new project sometimes does the trick for me. So, and then the third trick, oh, I was going to show you, just since I have this on my table, let me show you. Let me switch the camera. Here we go. Yeah, and so then I made these little, yeah, so this is going to be another pin cushion. So this is from Nicholas Ball's book, and I had an opportunity to do a Instagram tour with him to promote his new book, and I thought I'd stay on the theme of pin cushions, and I would make a pin cushion using one of his improv techniques. So this is also another pin cushion, and I love this so much. So it's another new project. It's kind of a tangent, but since I had it here, I thought I would show you. Okay, then the third trick that I do, and you are gonna hate this because I hate it. The third trick that I do to help me find my sewing motivation is I clean or organize my sewing studio. And the reason why I do this is sometimes I don't want to sew because I don't want to be in my sewing room, and sometimes I don't want to be in my sewing room because it is messy as heck. Sometimes it's just unorganized and I don't want to be there. It's not a conducive environment for me wanting to spend time in it. So sometimes I will just have to bite the bullet and I'll have to start just cleaning and organizing. So the third trick I do is I try to do something in my sewing room to make it feel more appealing to me as a maker. And for me, that means cleaning and organizing. Now, I was thinking a couple weeks ago, there was a night where I could have been sewing, but I didn't want to. I didn't want to go down in my sewing room, and I could tell that my lack of motivation was because my sewing room isn't quite up to speed. And what it really is I don't have any curtains in my sewing room right now. So behind the camera right there is just open windows, and there's no curtains or window treatments on it. So whenever it gets dark at night, someone could, in theory, just be like spying on me. So I decided that I need to go get some curtains so that I would feel comfortable to come down here and sew late at night. And as a mom, I think that's really important. I mean, as a mom, when your kids go to sleep, it's a really important time when you have your creative time. It's a really, for some moms, that's the only time that they have to really quilt. Okay, so those are the 3 things that I do when I feel like I've lost my sewjo. And I'm going to take a moment here and just say hi to the people that are on the call. So Anna Beach is here. Hey Anna, how are you? I haven't seen you in so long. And Penny is here. Penny said it's very hard to hear this. You must be referring to the cleaning. And yeah, it's not always the cleaning. Sometimes it's just we need to make our sewing spaces more cozy. So, I mean, another thing for me, my internet in my sewing room isn't the best. So if I want to go watch a show on Netflix while I'm sewing, you know, it's kind of hard to do when your internet isn't working. So I need to get my internet fixed so I can watch Netflix, or, you know, download it upstairs and then come downstairs. So it's not always cleaning. It's just more about making your sewing room a place where you want to spend time. Okay, Paula Morgan is here. Paula was just on another Facebook Live. I did not realize there were 2 Paulas in the last Facebook Live, Paula. So Paula McBride and Paula Morgan. So hi again, and no worries about being late. I didn't schedule this one, it was kind of impromptu. And Sylvia's here. Hey Sylvia from Omaha. I love Omaha. And Erica, good to see you again. Okay, I think that's all the people that have commented. Okay, yes, Erica is from Switzerland, and I had the great opportunity to go teach Erica and her buddies in Switzerland. That was such a great trip, Erica. I, great memories. Okay, so that is what I wanted to pop in here and share with you. So in this Facebook Live, I shared with you 3 tricks that I used to help me break out of a sewing funk, to help me find my sewing motivation. So my first trick is to take the next step on a project. So I shared, you know, a lot of us get stuck making the binding for our quilts that just need to be finished. So even just taking the smallest step in the next step. So if you're making binding, the smallest step might be to choose your fabric for the binding or just to cut the binding strips. So sometimes just taking the next step will help me break out of a sewing funk. The second trick is probably the most funnest, but maybe the least productive. The second trick is to start a new project. So I started these fun little pin cushions, and you know, starting a new project is fun, but you run the risk of adding another work in progress to your pile, and that might make you feel like you've lost your sewing mojo. So while it's fun to start a new project, it might be a little reckless, which is the fun, right? Okay, and then the third trick is, I said cleaning, but really it's making your sewing space more conducive, more a place that you want to spend time in. And that might mean cleaning, or it might mean tweaking your sewing space so it's more cozy for you and meets your making personality. Okay, so I'm going to do one more check of the comments. Hey, Allie, good to see you. And then Linda from Texas. And Linda, you also said it's difficult for you to decide on the color scheme once you've picked a pattern. That is definitely a big sticking point. Yes, and that is a huge sticking point. And I will be talking more about color palettes in the next few weeks. So do stay tuned and come back to the Facebook Live. So stay tuned there. Okay. Sylvia's laughing at my reckless comment. Reckless quilt making, it's the best. Okay, so that's what I wanted to share with you now. If you have a trick that works for you and helps you get out of a sewing funk, if you just want to leave your tip in the comments, I know I would appreciate hearing what your trick is, and I know others in the community would also love to hear what the trick is. And just know that if you've lost your sewjo, you are not alone, and it is absolutely normal. And hold on, you'll find it again. Okay, I will see you later. Bye for now.